येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातां सहगण रघुनाथान्वितां तां सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तु ते। तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौरभक्तवृन्द। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
ॐ नमो
ॐ नमो भगवते
वासुदेवाय।
वासुदेवाय।
ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
ॐ
ॐ
नमो
नमो भगवते
भगवते
वासुदेवाय।
वासुदेवाय।
नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवति उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। कृष्णे स्वधामोपगते धर्मज्ञानादिभिः सह कलौ नष्टदृशामेष पुराणार्को धुनोदितः। So, we are going to discuss verse number 34 from second canto, ninth chapter. So, as we were discussing before, that this particular second verse is from the like when we were discussing. So, this is the four nutshell verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. Like we have in Bhagavad Gita, four nutshell verses. Same way, in Srimad Bhagavatam, this is nutshell verses, and these questions were asked by Brahmaji, four different questions, and it has been answered in four different verses. So in the first verse, it was about the jnana. Jnana means the knowledge, and knowledge is about that the Supreme Lord is always existing. He existed before anything started. He existed when the creation is there, and he also will exist when everything is annihilated. So that is the basic understanding about it. And about this verse is about vijnana. Vijnana is when we understand what vijnana means when we understand is more detail of jnana. So in this vijnana means it tells about the nature of the Supreme Lord. So here we see, let us recite this verse. This is now rite artham yat pratiyeta
ऋते अर्थं यत् प्रतीयेत
na pratiyeta chatmani
न
न
प्रतीयेत
प्रतीयेत
चात्मनि
चात्मनि
advidyad atmano mayam
तद्विद्यात्
तद्विद्यात्
आत्मनो
आत्मनो
माया
मायाम्
तथा भासो यथा तमः।
यथा
यथा
भासो
भासो
यथा
यथा
तमः।
तमः।
One more time. ऋतेरर्थं यत् प्रतीयेत
ऋतेऽर्थं यत् प्रतीयेत
न प्रतीयेत चात्मनि
न प्रतीयेत
प्रतीयेत
चात्मनि
चात्मनि
तद्विद्यात्मनो मायाम्
तद्विद्यात्मनो
तद्विद्यात्मनो
माया
यथा भासो यथा तमः
यथा
यथा
भासो
भासो
यथा
यथा
तमः
तमः
ऋतेऽर्थं यत् प्रतीयेत
ऋतेऽर्थं
ऋतेऽर्थं
यत्
यत्
प्रतीयेत
प्रतीयेत
न प्रतीयेत चात्मनि
न
न
प्रतीयेत
प्रतीयेत
चात्मनि
चात्मनि
तद्विद्यात्मनो मायाम्
तद्विद्यात्मनो
तद्विद्यात्मनो
माया
माया
यथा भासो यथा तमः
यथा
यथा
भासो
भासो
यथा
यथा
तमः
तमः
some recitations, voluntary recitations.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु
Hare Krishna Matak.
ऋतेर्धं यत् प्रतीयेत
ऋतेऽर्थं
ऋतेऽर्थं
यत्
यत्
प्रतीयेत
प्रतीयेत न प्रतीयेत चात्मनि
न
न
प्रतीयेत
प्रतीयेत
चात्मनि
चात्मनि तद्विद्यादात्मनो मायाम्
तद्विद्यात्मनो
तद्विद्यात्मनो
मायाम्
यथा भासो यथा तमः
यथा
यथा
भासो
भासो
यथा
यथा
तमः
तमः थैंक यू प्रभु
ऋतेऽर्थं यत् प्रतीयेत
ऋतेऽर्थं यत्
प्रतीयेत
प्रतीयेत
न प्रतीयेत चात्मनि
न
न
प्रतीयेत
प्रतीयेत
चात्मनि
चात्मनि
तद् विद्यात् आत्मनो मयम्
तद्विद्यात्मनो
तद्विद्यादात्मनो
मायाम्
माया
यथा भासो यथा तमः
यथा
यथा
भासो यथा
भासो
तमः
यथा तमः
One more recitation.
हरे कृष्ण
Hare Krishna.
प्रभु ऋते अर्थं यथा प्रतीयेत
There
ऋतेऽर्थं
ऋतेर्धं
यत्
यत्
प्रतीयेत
प्रतीयेत
न प्रतीयेत चात्मनि
न
न
प्रतीयेत
प्रतीयेत
चात्मनि
तद्विद्या आत्मनो मायाम्
तद्विद्यात्मनो
तद्विद्यादात्मनो माया
मायाम्
यथा भासो यथा तमः
Yatha.
यथा
यथा
भासो
भासो
यथा
यथा
तमः
तमः
Thank you, Mataji.
थैंक यू प्रभु
So, just the background of this verse. So, Brahmaji, as I already mentioned, asked for different questions. So, and this is the answer to the second question. And when Lord tried to explain, he told that there are, in that verse, verse number 31, he tells that there is Jnanam, Vijnanam, Tadangam, and Sarahashyam. So, Jnanam we discussed in the first verse, and here is the Vijnanam. So, if we just say, see this verse line by line. So, Rite Artham Yat Pratiyeta. It says that whatever appears to be of any value, if it is not related to the Supreme Lord, it doesn't have any value. So just try to understand this. We will understand better. Whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relation to me, has no reality. So it's an illusion. Second part is tad vidyad atmano mayam na pratiyeta. So rite artham yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta chatmani. In this part, Lord says that whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relation to me, has no reality. So first we learned in the previous verse that Lord is actually present all the times, and it is everything is emanating from him, everything starts from him. And in the second verse he says that if somebody thinks that something is not related to the Lord, then it's a illusory understanding of that person. Then says Tadvidyad Atmano Mayam. It means know it as my illusory energy. So if people don't understand, then it is my illusory energy which is making them bewildered. Then Yatha Bhaso Yatha Tamaha. as the reflection of reality in the darkness of ignorance. How it is as the reflection of reality in the darkness of ignorance. So darkness of ignorance means like when we can discuss more when we read this further. So let's read the translation, because this is a big purport again.
O Brahma, whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relation to me, has no reality. Know it as my illusory energy, that reflection which appears to be in darkness.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So it says, know it as my illusory energy. What is that? Is that a reflection? It is not real, and that's why it's in darkness. And in the darkness, we cannot see the reality anywhere. So that is the understanding here. So before going into the purport, you just see how other acharyas have defined it. Srila Jiva Goswami in his Bhagavata Sandarbha, he says that this verse explains Vijnana, as we discussed. That is the realization of subtle science that occurs by the Lord's grace. In order to teach the truth that his forms and qualities are different from matter, the Lord describes the quality of the illusory energy. He is different from matter. That's what it is being defined here. Because matter, even though it's there, doesn't have a spiritual potency, because it is temporary. And a spirit by nature has eternality, bliss, like Sachidananda characteristic. So then Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says this verse substantiates the understanding of Sambandha, how Lord's energies are related to him. This verse tells about that. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says this verse explains about the actions of Mahamaya and Yogamaya. So there are two Maya potencies of the Lord, Mahamaya and Yogamaya. What is the difference? Mahamaya is that potency by whose power real objects are sometimes perceived and sometimes not perceived through Vidya and Avidya potencies. So real object can be seen differently. We'll also see in the purport how it is there. Yogamaya is that potency by whose power objects are perceived or not perceived by persons who have realized the Lord. So Yogamaya potency, for example of Yogamaya potency is Mother Yashoda forgetting that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even Krishna sometimes asks Yogamaya to put that veil on him so that he would not consider himself the Supreme Lord. That's how the pastimes can work. But Mahamaya is something which is actually bewildering us in this material ocean by the agency of three modes of material nature. But Yogamaya potency of the Lord does certain things on devotees who are very elevated. So that is the difference. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Bhajana Rahasya says this verse explains the knowledge of the form of Maya Shakti and Jiva Shakti, and Jiva Shakti is our nature and Maya Shakti is the illusory energy of the Lord, and that is Mahamaya. So because of that, even though we are superior, we are spirit souls, we are superior to the Maya Shakti, but we come under that illusion of Maya Shakti. Even though Maya Shakti is inferior, because of the illusion is, and why it is so, we would see. So first is knowing about the Lord, and now it is knowing in a very specialized way about the Lord. That is Vijnana, or the science of the Lord. So let's read the purport. And
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
In the previous verse, it has already been concluded that in any stage of the cosmic manifestation, its appearance, its sustenance, its growth, its interactions of different energies, its deterioration and its disappearance, all has its basic relation with the existence of the personality of Godhead. And as such, whenever there is forgetfulness of this prime relation with the Lord, and whenever things are accepted as real without being related to the Lord, that conception is called a product of the illusory energy of the Lord. Because nothing can exist without the Lord, it should be known that the illusory energy is also an energy of the Lord. The right conclusion of dovetailing everything in relationship with the Lord is called Yogamaya, or the energy of union. And the wrong conception of detaching a thing from its relationship with the Lord is called the Lord's Devi Maya or Mahamaya. Both the Mayas also have connections with the Lord because nothing can exist without being related to Him. As such, the wrong conception of detaching relationships from the Lord is not false, but illusory. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So this Prabhupada is clarifying more about this illusory energy of the Lord. So as he is saying here, because nothing can exist without the Lord. So illusory energy is also related to the Lord. The right conclusion of it says dovetailing everything in relationship with the Lord is called Yogamaya. So this is we just discussed what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says about Yogamaya, that this potency can only work on devotees to connect, to have those pastimes happen, and even this potency works on Lord Himself also by His will. He wants to be coming under that. Otherwise, how he will play with the Gopa boys and how he'll do different activities that we normally means if he is Supreme Lord and the Gopa boys would have that kind of feeling, they would never have that relationship with the Lord. So there Yogamaya potency works. And the wrong conception which we all have is like detaching a thing from its relationship from Lord. So Daivi Maya, which is Daivi hi esa gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mameva ye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. Bhagavad Gita, it says that about duratyaya. It's very difficult. But whoever is taking my names, it can go beyond this Daivi or Devi Maya or Mahamaya. So one thing important here is it's not false but illusory. How it is, let's see in this second part of the purport.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Misconceiving one thing for another thing is called illusion. For example, accepting a rope as a snake is illusion, but the rope is not false. The rope as it exists in the front of the illusion person is not at all false, but the acceptance is illusory. Therefore, the wrong conception of accepting this material manifestation of being divorced from the energy of the Lord is illusion, but it is not false. And this illusory conception is called the reflection of the reality in the darkness of ignorance. Anything that appears as apparently not being produced out of my energy is called Maya. The conception that the living entity is formless or that the Supreme Lord is formless is also illusion. And in Bhagavad Gita 2.12, it was said by the Lord in the midst of the battlefield that the warriors standing in front of Arjuna himself, and even the Lord had all existed before. They were existing on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and they would all continue to be individual personalities in the future also. Even after the annihilation of the present body and even after being liberated from the bondage of material existence. In all circumstances, the Lord and the living entities are individual personalities, and the personal feature of both the Lord and the living beings are being abolished. Only the influence of the illusory energy, the reflection of light in the darkness, can, by the mercy of the Lord, be removed. In the material world, the light of the sun is also not independent, nor is that of the moon. The real source of light is the Brahma Jyoti, which diffuses light from the transcendental body of the Lord. And the same light is reflected in varieties of light. The light of the sun, the light of the moon, the light of the fire, the light of electricity. So the identity of the self as being unconnected with the Supreme Self, the Lord, is also illusion. And the false claim, I am the Supreme, is the last illusory snare of the same Maya, or the external energy of the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. So, as we were discussing here, there is a thing wrong conception of detaching relationship from Lord is not false but illusory. The example given here is accepting a rope as a snake is illusion. But but is it like the rope is not there? Rope is still there. But our acceptance of rope as a snake is called illusion. but rope exists and snake also exist in their form. But we have accepted rope as a snake, and that is a illusion. That is the meaning of that. So rope as it exists in front of illusion person is not at all false. That's what Prabhupada says here in the purport. And here, although it appears excuse me, that apparently not being produced of my energy is called Maya. So that is Maya means which is not there. That is the meaning of Maya. And then even in Bhagavad Gita 2.12, which Prabhupada quotes here, says that everybody was there. And in that verse it says, not, means in the midst of the battlefield, everybody in front of Arjuna would be there now. They were there before also, and they would be existing after everybody is annihilated also. Because Krishna is talking about the spirit soul, which always exists. So, in all circumstances, the Lord and the living entities are individual personalities. So they don't actually lose their personality. In the concept of Mayavad concept, they lose that. Like for example, the living entity becomes the supreme Lord when he becomes realized. It never happens according to the Bhakti philosophy. So it says that here, by the mercy of the Lord, these illusory energy can be removed. One thing important here is we talked about the reflection of light in the darkness. So there is already a darkness. So only by the mercy of the Lord and his devotees, these illusions can be removed, and we can see the real picture. And then Prabhupada tells about the source of energy, source of all the light comes from the Brahma Jyoti, which is the effulgence of the Supreme Lord, which is there present in the spiritual world. And that energy is what is been reflected by the sun, the moon, and all the things that are producing the light. So here it says, even here, that I am the supreme, that once a living entity becomes, says that I am God, that Mayavad concept, that's why it says last illusory snare of Maya. When that happens, the living entity, there is no chance of him be connected to the Supreme Lord, which is that real position. And what happens is he goes down and down because of this illusory understanding. So let's read the other parts of the purport. This time let's read 3 different paragraphs.
Hare
The
Krishna.
Vedanta Sutra in the very beginning affirms that everything is born from the Supreme, and thus, as explained in the previous verse, all individual living entities are born from the energy of the Supreme Living Being, the personality of Godhead. Brahma himself was born from the energy of the Lord, and all other living entities are born from the energy of the Lord through the agency of Brahma. None of them has any existence without being dovetailed with the Supreme Lord. The independence of the individual living entity is not real independence, but is just the reflection of the real independence existing in the Supreme Being, the Lord. The false claim of supreme independence by the conditioned souls is illusion, and this conclusion is admitted in this verse. Persons with a poor fund of knowledge become illusioned, and therefore the so-called scientists, psychologists, empiric philosophers, etc., become dazzled by the glaring reflection of the sun, moon, electricity, etc., and deny the existence of the Supreme Lord, putting forward theories and different speculations about the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of everything material. The medical practitioner may deny the existence of the soul in the psychological bodily construction of an individual person, but he cannot give life to a dead body, even though all the mechanisms of the body exist even after death. The psychologist makes a serious study of the psychological conditions of the brain, as if the construction of the cerebral lump were the machine of the functioning mind, but in the dead body, the psychologist cannot bring back the function of the mind. These scientific studies of the cosmic manifestation or the bodily construction construction, independent of the Supreme Lord, are different reflective intellectual gymnastics only. But at the end, they are all illusion and nothing more. All such advancement of science and knowledge in the present context of material civilization is but an action of the covering influence of the illusory energy. The illusory energy has two phases of existence, namely the covering influence and the throwing influence. By the throwing influence, the illusory energy throws the living entities into the darkness of ignorance, and by the covering influence, she covers the eyes of man with a poor fund of knowledge about the existence of the Supreme Person who enlightened the Supreme Individual Living Being, Brahma. The identity of Brahma with the Supreme Lord is never claimed herein, and therefore such a foolish claim by the man with a poor fund of knowledge is another display of the illusory energy of the Lord. The Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita 16, 18 to 20, that demoniac persons who deny the existence of the Lord are thrown more and more into the darkness of ignorance, and thus such demoniac persons transmigrate life after life without any knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Mataji. So, just moving forward with the discussion, the Vedanta Sutra, there is the first verse called Janmadi Yasya Yataha. It means everything is born from the Supreme Lord. And as explained as Prabhupada says in the previous verse, all individual living entities are born from the energy of the Supreme Living Being. And Brahma being the secondary creator, then Brahma, after the secondary creator, he collects all the elements from the material power, which is called Mahat Tattva, material ingredients, and then the bodies are being given, and soul is being there within each body. So that's how so many different bodies in so many different forms are being generated. So it says none of them has any existence without being dovetailed with the Supreme Lord. So there is some hand of Supreme Lord somewhere. Sometimes we cannot see that hand. Like the example is given, if there is like a president there, and there are like govern the bodies which are there in locally, like the counties. So they are also controlling somehow the parts of that particular state, but it doesn't mean that they are different from the, even though the president's hand is not there, but they are indirectly linked to him. It's like king and his subjects, that's how they are linked. So here, and then next is the independence of the individual living entity is not the real independence. We are also, like for example, as Supreme Lord also is an independent Lord have also provided us a free will, a minute level of independence which we have. But what happens when somebody is in the illusion, he thinks that I have supreme independence as the Supreme Lord. That is the illusion, and that is the Mayavad concept. And then Prabhupada says them persons with poor fund of knowledge. And then he gives an example of scientists, physiologists, empiric philosophers, that they are thinking that where the original light is coming from. And then he gives example of a dead body. If there is a dead body, everything is there. Then why they cannot put life into it? Once the soul is gone, there is no, even though every body as a machine is there, it cannot function. Same thing can be told about the mind also. Like for example, psychologists make a serious study of physiological condition of the brain. But in a dead body, the psychologist cannot bring back the function of the mind. So even the mind is somehow related to the living force, which is the soul within our body. So that's the reason there is a living force which makes every living entity moving. Then Srila Prabhupada tells that all such advancement of science and knowledge in the present context of material civilization is an action of covering influence. So there are two types of like illusory energy have in their existence, two different phases, namely the covering influence and the throwing influence. So we can experience both of them. By the throwing influence of the illusory energy throws the living entities into the darkness of ignorance, because we are in that darkness of ignorance. That's why we don't know the Supreme Lord. We are trying to come to that understanding. And by covering influence, she covers the eyes of men with the poor fund of knowledge, like the scientist and different people who think that they are the one who is discovering and inventing the things. It's the supreme thing which is there already, and they are discovering certain new things, but they uh, consider themselves as the creator of the things, which is not really true. So, about then it is said the identity of Brahma with the Supreme Lord is never claimed herein. Therefore, as a foolish claim by the man with poor fund of knowledge is another display of illusory energy of the Lord. And then, okay, here it says, okay, let's read further.
Hare Krishna. The
Hare
same,
Krishna.
the same man, however, is enlightened in the disciplic succession from Brahmaji, who was personally instructed by the Lord, or in the disciplic succession from Arjuna, who was personally instructed by the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita. He accepts this statement of the Lord, Aham sarvasva prabhavo mattah sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhav samanvitah. Bhagavad Gita 10.8. The Lord is the original source of all emanations, and everything that is created, maintained, and annihilated exists by the energy of the Lord. The sane man who knows this is actually learned, and therefore he becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Although the reflectory energy of the Lord displays various illusions to the eyes of the persons with the poor fund of knowledge, the sane person knows clearly that the Lord can act even from far, far beyond our vision by his different energies, just as fire can diffuse heat and light from a distant place. In the medical science of the ancient sages, known as the Ayurveda, there is definite acceptance of Lord's supremacy in the following words. Jagat yonir anichasya chid anandaik rupinah pumso asti prakritir nitya pratichayev bhasvatah achetanapi chaitanya yogena paramatmanah akarod vishwam akhilam anityam nataka kritim. There is one supreme person who is the progenitor. Should I stop, Prabhu?
Let's see. Mataji, you can read this one.
There is one supreme person who is the progenitor of this cosmic manifestation and whose energy acts as Prakriti, or the material nature, dazzling like a reflection. By such illusory action of Prakriti, even dead matter is caused to move by the cooperation of living energy of the Lord, and the material world appears like a dramatic performance to the ignorant eyes. The ignorant person, therefore, may even be a scientist or psychologist in the drama of Prakriti, while the sane person knows Prakriti as the illusory energy of the Lord. By such a conclusion, as confirmed by the Bhagavad Gita, it is clear that the living entities are also a display of Lord's superior energy, para Prakriti, just as the material world is a display of Lord's inferior energy, apara Prakriti. The superior energy of the Lord cannot be as good as the Lord, although there is very little difference between the energy and the possessor of the energy, or the fire and the heat. Fire is possessed of heat, but heat is not fire. This simple thing is not understood by the man with the poor fund of knowledge, who falsely claims that the fire and heat are the same. This energy of the fire, namely heat, is explained here as a reflection and not directly fire. Therefore, the living energy represented by the living entities is the reflection of the Lord and never the Lord himself. Being the reflection of the Lord, the existence of the living entity is dependent on Supreme Lord, who is the original light. This material energy may be compared to darkness, as actually it is darkness, and the activities of the living entities in the darkness are reflections of the original light. The Lord should be understood by the context of the Lord should be understood by the context of this verse. Non-dependence of both the energies of the Lord is explained as Maya or illusion. No one can make a solution of the darkness of ignorance simply by the reflection of light. Similarly, no one can come out of material existence simply by the reflected light of the common man. One has to receive the light from the original light itself. The reflection of sunlight in the darkness is unable to drive out the darkness, but the sunlight outside the reflection can drive out the darkness completely. In darkness, no one can see the things in a room. Therefore, a person in the dark is afraid of snakes and scorpions, although there may not be such things. But in the light, the things in the room can be clearly seen, and the fear of snakes and scorpions is at once removed. Therefore, one has to take shelter of the light of the Lord, as in the Bhagavad Gita or the Srimad Bhagavatam, and not the reflective personalities who have no touch with the Lord. No one should hear Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam from a person who does not believe in the existence of the Lord. Such a person is already doomed, and any association with such a doomed person makes the associator also doomed.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare
So
Krishna.
this is so deep philosophy which is going. So just telling in a very simple understanding. Here in this part of purport, as I was mentioning before, that the demoniac person who denied the existence of the Lord, they like having the understanding that they are the Lord themselves. When that happens, they never have the propensity to go to the real position, which is to be the servant of the Lord. And what happens? They go further down and down in the material creation in different, like there are 14 different planetary systems in the entire Bhumandala or the universe. So they go below that, like for example, to the tamasic planets, like going down in the Patala, Atala, Vitala, Patala, and all those places. But then Prabhupada says the sane man, however, is enlightened in disciplic succession from Brahmaji. And then he understands Krishna saying that Aham Sarvasya Prabhu Mattaha Sarvam Pravartate. But itimatva bhajante mam. If we understand that this is the correct thing, and then bhaja means to take the names of the Lord, Buddha Bhava Sanandita. So then the proper understanding comes, enlightenment comes. Then here it says that the reflectory energy of the Lord displays various illusions to the eyes of persons. Even in the medical science of the ancient sages, Ayurveda, it says about Jagadyonir Anichaya Chid Anandaika Rupina Pumso Asti Prakritir Nitya Pratichayeva Bhasvataha. Achetana api Chaitanya Yogena Paramatmanaha. So Achetana api Chaitanya, you can see. So the Achetana things are material things, and Chaitanya things are which have energy of the living force. So that those are the soul, or Paraprakriti and Aparaprakriti, which is being described. So Yogena Paramatmana, this is done by the Paramatma. This means this Achetana api Chaitanya. This is that reflection is done by the Supreme Lord, as it says here. Like there is one Supreme Person who is the progenitor of this cosmic manifestation, and whose energy acts as Prakriti, dazzling like a reflection. So here it says, just we discussed about Para Prakriti, which is the superior energy of the Lord. Like our real position is super, as the soul is, we are part of Para Prakriti. And Apara Prakriti is Lord's inferior energy, which is the illusory energy of the Lord. But we are in control of that. But Lord is not in the control of apara prakriti, because he's beyond para and apara. He is paratpara. So that's why he is beyond that. And then Prabhupada gives example of the fire example, that fire we see, namely heat, is explained here as reflection, not directly fire. Therefore, the living energy represented by living entities is the reflection of the Lord. So we, as our constitutional position as a servant of the Lord, we are a reflection of the Lord, never Lord. We cannot become Lord. That's what Prabhupada always makes a point here, because Mayavadi concept or Mayavadi school always believes that one can become Lord when he is sufficiently self-realized. So he'll say that I am God, you are God, and everybody is God, and everybody can become God. So Prabhupada, in different places in Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, wanted to make it very clear that this is not the case. And he ends here saying that one should understand Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam from the bona fide source who have a belief in the Lord. Who doesn't have a belief, he cannot give the correct information. So let's read the last paragraph.
According to the Padma Purana, within the material compass, there are innumerable material universes, and all of them are full of darkness. Any living being beginning from the Brahmas, there are innumerable Brahmas in innumerable universes. So the insignificant ant are all born in darkness, and they require actual light from the Lord to see Him directly, just as the sun can be seen only by the direct light of the sun. No lamp or man-made torchlight, however powerful it may be, can help one see the sun. The sun reveals itself. Therefore, the action of different energies of the Lord or the personality of Godhead Himself can be realized by the light manifested by the causeless mercy of the Lord. The impersonalists say that God cannot be seen. God can be seen by the light of God and not by man-made speculations. Here, this light is specifically mentioned as Vidyayat, which is an order by the Lord to Brahma. This direct order of the Lord is a manifestation of his internal energy, and this particular energy is the means of seeing the Lord face to face. Not only Brahma, but anyone who may be graced by the Lord to see such merciful direct internal energy can also realize the personality of Godhead without any mental speculation.
Thank you
Hare
so much,
Krishna.
Prabhuji. So this is the message for us. This paragraph tells about that Lord can be revealed by His own potency only. When He has the mercy on us, He can reveal. Like for example, it says that as the sun can be only seen by the direct light of the sun, no lamp or man-made torchlight, however powerful it may be, can help us see the sun. So sun reveals itself. So with that example, and here in this verse there is a term called vidyat. This light is called, that is Lord's light. He can reveal that light to us so that we can understand Him, like Lord Brahma. And then Prabhupada gives a very good hope here, that like Lord Brahma, Brahma is actually looking at the Lord and he understands that light. But anyone who may be graced by the Lord to see such merciful direct internal energy can also realize the personality of Godhead without any mental speculation. So that is the message here. And for us, what is the understanding? That Lord and any energy of the Lord, even the illusory energy of the Lord, is also part of the Lord, but the Lord doesn't directly react, means interact with that energy, but that is present. So it says, whatever appears of any value has its relationship with the Lord. So that is the take home from this verse. Yeah, these four verses will take some time, but any discussion points, any corrections, any realizations before we go for a close?